When asked directly about alien symbols during the 2025 congressional hearing, Pentagon officials gave responses that revealed more than they intended. They confirmed that engraved markings on UAPs have been documented and studied by government linguists for years. The most telling moment came when they refused to discuss the meaning of these symbols in public session, citing classification levels that had never been mentioned before. Former intelligence officials are now breaking their silence about what the government really knows about alien communication systems. What they're revealing contradicts decades of official denials and shows a pattern of systematic study that goes back further than anyone imagined. The March hearing became the moment when careful government language finally cracked under direct questioning. The moment Pentagon officials couldn't deny. Representative Johnson leaned forward in his chair during the July 2023 House Oversight hearing, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. Deputy Secretary Morrison, I'm going to ask you a direct question about the markings found on recovered UAP materials. Are you aware of any documentation regarding symbols or script-like engravings on these craft? The question hung in the air for what felt like an eternity. Morrison's face went rigid, his eyes darting to the legal counsel seated behind him. His colleague, Assistant Secretary Williams, shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her hands clasping and unclasping the folder in front of her. The silence stretched for nearly 15 seconds before Morrison finally spoke. Congressman, I can confirm that our documentation protocols include the recording of all physical characteristics observed on recovered materials. His voice carried a careful precision that everyone in the room recognized. Johnson pressed further. That's not what I asked. Are there symbols or markings that appear to be some form of script or language on these craft? Williams jumped in before Morrison could respond. Representative Johnson, we have documented various markings and configurations on materials under our analysis. Some of these markings have required specialized interpretation. The word choice was deliberate and revealing. They didn't say unusual patterns or manufacturing marks. They said specialized interpretation. Morrison added, we have linguistic specialists who have been consulted on certain materials in our possession. The admission sent ripples through the committee room. For the first time in decades of UAP hearings, Pentagon officials had acknowledged that government linguists were actively studying what could only be described as engraved markings on recovered craft. Johnson wasn't finished. Deputy Secretary, when you say specialized interpretation, are you referring to attempts to decode what might be non-human communication? Morrison's response came faster this time, but his discomfort was obvious. Congressman, I cannot discuss the specific nature of our analysis methods or findings in this setting due to classification requirements. Williams nodded in agreement, adding, what I can say is that our documentation standards have evolved significantly over the past several years to capture all observable characteristics. The careful phrasing revealed everything they were trying to hide. Previous Pentagon officials had flatly denied the existence of recovered craft altogether. These officials weren't denying anything. They were confirming that materials existed, that markings had been found, and that linguists were studying them. The shift in language represented a fundamental change in official position. Something had forced their hand. Committee member Representative Davis picked up the thread. Are you telling us that the United States government has been employing linguists to study what you believe might be alien script? Morrison's jaw tightened. Representative Davis, we employ various specialists to analyze materials of unknown origin. This includes individuals with expertise in symbol systems and pattern recognition. The admission was stunning. They had just confirmed that unknown materials with symbol systems were being analyzed by pattern recognition experts. Williams tried to regain control of the narrative. I want to emphasize that our analysis procedures are thorough and scientific. We don't make assumptions about the origin or meaning of any markings we document. But her clarification only made things worse. She had just confirmed that they were analyzing markings for meaning, which implied the markings were sophisticated enough to potentially contain information. The body language told the complete story. Morrison kept glancing at his notes, not reading from them but clearly seeking comfort from their presence. Williams maintained eye contact with the committee members, but her blinking rate had increased dramatically. Both officials displayed the classic signs of people trying to navigate between truth and classified information. Their discomfort wasn't about being unprepared. It was about being caught between congressional demands for transparency and security protocols that prohibited them from revealing what they actually knew. Representative Chen pressed the officials further. Deputy Secretary Morrison, you mentioned that documentation protocols have evolved. Does this mean that symbol documentation is now standard procedure for UAP investigations? Morrison's response came after another pause. Our investigation protocols are comprehensive and include documentation of all physical characteristics, including surface features and any markings present on materials. He had just confirmed that symbol documentation was now standard procedure. The implications were staggering. If symbol documentation was standard procedure, it meant that symbols were being found regularly enough to warrant formal protocols. Williams attempted damage control. I should clarify that we document everything as a matter of scientific rigor, not because we expect to find specific types of markings. But her clarification revealed even more. Scientific rigor suggested they were treating these markings as potentially significant rather than dismissing them as random scratches or manufacturing artifacts. The hearing marked a complete departure from previous Pentagon responses. In earlier sessions, officials had consistently denied the existence of recovered materials entirely. Now they were acknowledging materials, markings, linguistic analysis, and specialized interpretation protocols. The shift represented either a policy change or a situation where continued denial had become impossible. Morrison's final statement on the topic was perhaps the most revealing. Congressman, I want to assure this committee that any materials in our possession are being analyzed with the highest levels of scientific and linguistic expertise available. The phrase, linguistic expertise, confirmed that the markings were complex enough to require actual linguists rather than just materials analysts or engineers. The hearing had produced something unprecedented in UAP disclosure history. Pentagon officials had admitted that recovered craft contained symbols requiring linguistic analysis. They had confirmed that government linguists were actively studying these symbols. They had acknowledged that specialized interpretation was needed to understand the markings. Most significantly, they had revealed that symbol documentation was now standard procedure for UAP investigations. The transformation in official language was impossible to ignore. Where previous officials had offered blanket denials, these officials offered careful confirmations hedged with classification concerns. The change suggested that the government's position on UAP materials had shifted from denial to acknowledgement, even if full disclosure remained restricted by security protocols. The July hearing would be remembered as the moment when Pentagon officials could no longer maintain complete silence about engraved markings on recovered materials. Their careful admissions had opened a door that couldn't be closed, confirming that the government possessed physical evidence requiring linguistic analysis. But their refusal to discuss classification-protected findings left crucial questions unanswered, creating a vacuum that others would soon feel compelled to fill. Former intelligence officials break their silence. Within weeks of those uncomfortable admissions, former intelligence officials started coming forward with information that filled in the blanks left by official testimony. These weren't random whistleblowers looking for attention. These were career professionals who had spent decades working in the shadows of America's most classified programs. Sarah Chen broke her silence first. The former DIA analyst had spent 12 years reviewing intelligence reports that crossed her desk at the Defense Intelligence Agency. In April 2025, she sat down for an interview that would change everything. Chen described classified reports from the 1990s that detailed simple analysis on recovered materials. She remembered specific case files that documented attempts to categorize different types of markings found on craft retrieved from various locations. The reports weren't speculation or theory. They were operational documents that treated alien script as an established reality requiring systematic study. Chen's account was specific and detailed. She described seeing photographs of symbols that appeared to be etched or molded into metal surfaces using unknown techniques. The reports she reviewed contained measurements, spectroscopic analysis, and attempts to categorize the symbols by complexity and frequency. She remembered one particular document from 1997 that discussed the discovery of identical symbols on craft recovered 3 years apart from different geographic locations. The implication was clear. These weren't random markings but consistent communication elements being used across different incidents. The personal cost of Chen's revelation became apparent immediately. Her security clearance was suspended pending investigation. Legal challenges followed as government attorneys argued she had violated her oath of secrecy. But Chen pressed forward, stating that the public deserved to know what their government had been hiding for decades. Her willingness to face these consequences gave weight to her testimony and encouraged others to speak out. Retired Air Force Colonel Martinez emerged as the next major voice. His revelation was even more explosive than Chen's. Martinez had overseen what he called non-conventional communication systems analysis during his tenure from 2005 to 2018. He described a dedicated team of linguists and cryptographers who worked exclusively on what they internally referred to as anomalous symbolic material. The team wasn't large, maybe 8 to 10 specialists at any given time, but they were highly trained and had access to the most advanced analytical tools available. Martinez provided details about the team's operations that Pentagon officials had carefully avoided mentioning. The Linguists worked in a secure facility that required special clearances beyond typical top-secret classification. They had access to high-resolution imagery, material samples, and 3D scanning technology that allowed them to analyze symbols from multiple angles and perspectives. Martinez described the team's frustration with their inability to make meaningful progress despite years of effort and significant resource investment. The colonel's account revealed the scope of the government's commitment to understanding these symbols. Millions of dollars had been spent on specialized equipment, expert consultants, and research partnerships with universities. The fact that such resources were being devoted to symbol analysis demonstrated that the government took these markings seriously as genuine communication rather than random surface features or manufacturing artifacts. Dr. Williams, the former NSA cryptographer, provided the most technical perspective on the government's decoding efforts. Her background in breaking enemy codes and analyzing foreign communication systems made her uniquely qualified to assess the alien symbols. Williams described her work from 2010 to 2020, focusing specifically on recurring symbol patterns that appeared across multiple incidents. She had applied traditional cryptographic methods, frequency analysis, and pattern recognition algorithms to the symbol sets provided by other agencies. Williams's testimony revealed the systematic approach the government had taken to understanding these markings. She described databases containing thousands of symbol variants, statistical analysis of symbol frequency and placement, and attempts to correlate symbols with craft capabilities or flight characteristics. The NSA had even developed specialized software to assist in pattern recognition and potential decoding efforts. Williams made it clear that these weren't casual observations but serious scientific attempts to crack what appeared to be a structured communication system. The timing of these revelations in 2025 wasn't coincidental. All three officials cited the same factors that motivated their decision to speak publicly. The Pentagon's admissions during the July hearing had created an opening that hadn't existed before. For the first time, government officials had acknowledged that symbol analysis was happening, which gave former officials cover to discuss their own experiences without completely violating classification protocols. Despite working in different agencies and time periods, the consistency in their accounts was remarkable. All three described similar frustrations with the complexity of the symbols and the inability to make meaningful progress using conventional methods. They all mentioned the systematic nature of the markings and the government's belief that they represented genuine communication rather than random features. Their testimonies aligned on key details about the scope of government knowledge and the resources devoted to understanding these symbols. The common thread running through all their accounts was government frustration with decoding progress. Williams described the symbols as resistant to conventional cryptographic analysis. Martinez mentioned that his team had exhausted traditional linguistic approaches without success. Chen remembered reports that expressed concern about the lack of progress despite years of effort. This frustration suggested that the symbols represented a level of sophistication that exceeded current human understanding of communication systems. Their revelations filled critical gaps in the official Pentagon narrative. While government officials had admitted that linguistic analysis was occurring, they hadn't revealed the scale of the effort or the resources committed to it. The former officials' accounts showed that symbol analysis wasn't a minor side project but a major classified program involving multiple agencies and significant investment over decades. These officials' willingness to speak out despite personal consequences provided crucial context for understanding the scope of government knowledge about alien communication systems. Their accounts transformed the Pentagon's careful admissions from bureaucratic hedging into confirmation of decades-long classified programs dedicated to studying evidence of nonhuman intelligence. But their testimonies also revealed how much remained hidden behind classification barriers, suggesting that official documents might contain even more detailed information about these programs than anyone had previously imagined. The classified documents that changed everything. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 3 separate FOIA lawsuits filed in late 2024 had been working their way through federal court when the Pentagon's July admissions changed everything. Government attorneys could no longer argue that these documents didn't exist or that their release would compromise national security by revealing capabilities that officials had already acknowledged publicly. The legal pressure became impossible to resist when Judge Patricia Hendricks ruled in February 2025 that the government's own admissions had waived their classification claims for basic acknowledgement of symbol analysis programs. The first batch of documents released in early March revealed the existence of Project Rosetta, a classified initiative that had been running since 1985. The project file showed systematic attempts to decode what internal documents consistently referred to as non-human symbolic communication systems. The scope was far beyond what anyone had imagined. Project Rosetta maintained detailed catalogs of symbols found on recovered materials, employed teams of linguists and cryptographers, and had consumed over $40 million in black budget funding across 4 decades. The Project Rosetta files contained operational procedures that treated alien script as an established reality requiring systematic study. Document PRJRST001 outlined collection protocols for symbol documentation, including high-resolution photography, 3D scanning, and spectroscopic analysis of marking areas. The procedures assumed that symbols would be found regularly enough to warrant standardized documentation methods. Collection teams were instructed to pay particular attention to symbol placement, size variations, and any correlation with craft structural features. A 1987 memo from Project Rosetta's director described recurring symbolic patterns that appeared across multiple recovered craft. The memo documented identical symbols found on materials retrieved from incidents in Nevada, New Mexico, and Montana between 1983 and 1987. The project's linguistic coordinator noted that the consistency of these symbols across different incidents suggested intentional communication rather than random surface features. She recommended expanding the project's scope to include statistical analysis of symbol frequency and placement patterns. The memo revealed that even in the 1980s, government analysts recognized they were dealing with structured communication. The linguistic assessment stated that the symbols showed grammatical consistency and logical placement hierarchies that indicated sophisticated language use. Analysts specifically noted that certain symbols appeared to function as modifiers for other symbols, suggesting a complex grammatical structure that exceeded simple pictographic communication. The 2003 report that established formal protocols for documenting and analyzing non-human markings represented a major evolution in government approach. Document PRJRST156 created the Anomalous Symbolic Material Analysis Protocol, which became the standard for all agencies encountering potential alien script. The protocol required immediate documentation, material sampling when possible, and referral to specialized linguistic analysis teams. The document's classification level was special access required, indicating the highest levels of secrecy. The protocol document revealed that symbols had been appearing on craft recovered across different decades and locations with sufficient frequency to warrant formal procedures. The report cited 43 documented cases of symbolic materials between 1987 and 2003, with incidents spanning from Alaska to Florida. The geographic distribution showed no pattern that corresponded to human population centers or military installations, suggesting the symbols represented non-human activity across broad areas of the United States. Government attempts to correlate symbols with craft capabilities produced some of the most intriguing findings in the declassified files. Document PRJRST203 from 2008 describes statistical analysis showing that craft with more complex symbol arrangements consistently demonstrated superior flight characteristics. The project's technical coordinator noted that craft with 20 or more distinct symbols showed propulsion capabilities that exceeded those with fewer markings. The correlation was strong enough to suggest that symbols might represent functional information rather than decorative elements. The classified assessment that these symbols represented structured communication rather than random markings appeared in multiple documents spanning different time periods. A 2001 analysis concluded that the symbols showed intentional information encoding, based on their consistent appearance, logical placement, and correlation with craft features. The report stated that the probability of these patterns occurring randomly was statistically negligible, providing strong evidence for intentional communication. The analysis included frequency studies that revealed certain symbols appeared significantly more often than others, similar to letter frequency in human languages. Researchers identified what appeared to be root symbols that formed the basis for more complex markings, suggesting a hierarchical structure similar to morphological systems in human languages. The analysis concluded that the symbols represented the most sophisticated non-human communication system ever documented. The revelation about government consultation with ancient language experts and cryptographers appeared in Project Rosetta's 2010 expansion documents. The project had recruited specialists in linear A, Sanskrit, and other ancient undeciphered scripts to assist with analysis. A specialist in ancient Mesopotamian languages was brought in to apply historical decryption methods to the alien symbols. The consultation documents showed that traditional linguistic approaches had been exhausted without success, leading to recommendations for alternative analytical methods. The files revealed that the government had also consulted with NSA cryptographers who specialized in breaking enemy codes. Document PRJRST267 described attempts to apply frequency analysis, pattern recognition, and statistical methods used in traditional cryptography. The results were consistently negative, with analysts concluding that the symbols didn't follow patterns recognizable in human communication systems. This failure led to recommendations for developing new analytical approaches specifically designed for non-human communication. These documents contradicted decades of official statements about the lack of physical evidence for alien visitation. While officials had consistently denied possessing any materials of non-human origin, the Project Rosetta files showed that symbol analysis had been a major classified program for 4 decades. The contradiction was absolute and undeniable. Government officials had been lying about the existence of physical evidence while simultaneously spending millions to analyze that evidence. The scope of documentation revealed in these files was staggering. Project Rosetta maintained over 12,000 photographs of symbols, 3D scans of 847 different markings, and spectroscopic analysis of symbol materials from hundreds of incidents. The database included detailed measurements, placement analysis, and correlation studies that represented the most comprehensive collection of alien communication evidence ever assembled. The project's methodical approach demonstrated the government's serious commitment to understanding these symbols as genuine evidence of non-human intelligence. The declassified Project Rosetta files transformed the UAP disclosure landscape by providing official confirmation that alien script analysis had been a major classified program for decades. The documents showed that the government had known about alien communication systems since the 1980s and had committed substantial resources to understanding them. But the files also revealed something else: the existence of a specialized team of government linguists who had been working on this problem for years. The linguists who tried to crack the code. The team that emerged from these classified programs wasn't your typical government linguistic unit. These specialists had been handpicked from universities, the NSA, and military intelligence to tackle what their supervisors called the most challenging communication problem in human history. The 2020 J. Stratton slide deck, released through FOIA requests, confirmed that specialized analysis teams had been working on symbol interpretation for years. High-resolution images released via the Black Vault and ARO imagery pages clearly showed engraved markings that required expert review, validating the need for dedicated linguistic resources. The linguists discovered immediately that conventional analytical methods failed completely when applied to the alien symbols. Traditional frequency analysis showed patterns that made no sense within human linguistic frameworks. Dr. Richard Hayes, a specialist in computational linguistics, described the symbols as grammatically impossible, according to human language rules. The team tried applying phonetic analysis, morphological breakdown, and syntactic parsing without success. Hayes noted that the symbols seemed to violate basic principles of human communication, including linear progression and hierarchical structure. The team spent months cataloging recurring patterns in the symbol sets. They identified what appeared to be root symbols that formed the basis for more complex markings. These base symbols combined in ways that suggested systematic rules, but the rules didn't match any known linguistic patterns. Dr. Sandra Kim, the team's pattern recognition specialist, found that symbol combinations followed mathematical relationships rather than grammatical ones. The patterns were consistent enough to indicate structured communication, but the structure operated on principles completely foreign to human language systems. The breakthrough came when analysts realized the symbols might represent three-dimensional concepts rather than linear language. Dr. James Peterson had been analyzing symbol placement on curved craft surfaces when he noticed that the markings weren't arranged in straight lines like human writing. Instead, they formed complex geometric patterns that only made sense when viewed from specific angles. He hypothesized that the symbols might encode spatial relationships and three-dimensional information that human languages couldn't express directly. Peterson's three-dimensional theory revolutionized the team's approach. They began analyzing symbols in relation to craft geometry, material properties, and structural features. Their analysis revealed that symbol complexity correlated with craft sophistication. Simpler craft carried basic symbol sets, while more advanced vehicles displayed complex geometric arrangements that suggested multi-layered information encoding. This correlation implied that the symbols weren't just communication but functional elements integrated into craft design. The team's analysis revealed that symbol placement on craft surfaces correlated with specific functions and capabilities. Dr. Lisa Chen, a materials scientist assigned to the project, discovered that symbols appeared most frequently near what appeared to be propulsion systems and navigation equipment. Her analysis showed that symbol areas had different properties than unmarked surfaces, suggesting the markings served functional purposes beyond communication. Chen's work indicated that symbols might be instructions embedded directly into craft structure. Internal memos expressed mounting frustration with the symbol's resistance to conventional decoding methods. Team leaders wrote that they had exhausted traditional linguistic approaches and recommended exploring alternative analytical frameworks. They noted that the symbols seemed designed to resist human comprehension, possibly indicating that they weren't intended for external communication but for internal operational purposes. The team's inability to make progress despite years of effort and substantial resources created tension within the program. The collaboration with computer scientists marked a significant shift in the project's methodology. The team partnered with AI researchers to develop machine learning algorithms specifically designed for pattern recognition in non-human communication systems. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, a computer scientist specializing in neural networks, created algorithms that could identify recurring patterns and structural relationships invisible to human analysts. The AI systems processed thousands of symbol combinations looking for mathematical relationships and geometric patterns. The computer analysis produced unexpected results. Rodriguez's algorithms identified recurring mathematical sequences embedded within symbol arrangements. The AI had detected prime number sequences, geometric progressions, and complex mathematical relationships encoded in symbol placement. The discovery suggested that the symbols operated on mathematical principles rather than linguistic ones, supporting Peterson's theory about three-dimensional information encoding. The classified assessment suggesting the symbols might be instructions rather than language emerged from this mathematical analysis. Dr. Rodriguez concluded that the symbols represented operational codes rather than communicative language. His assessment stated that the markings appeared to be functional instructions embedded in craft structure rather than messages intended for external readers. This hypothesis explained why traditional linguistic methods had failed and why symbols correlated with craft capabilities. The instruction theory gained support from additional analysis of symbol placement and craft performance. Teams discovered that craft with specific symbol arrangements consistently demonstrated similar flight characteristics. They documented multiple cases where identical symbols appeared on craft that exhibited matching propulsion signatures and maneuverability patterns.